In the Holywood's nose, mid-field and fald, a jeweller bides wi' talents bald. Frae foreign lands her craft she learnt to ply, and brought them hame to Doon to try. Scrabo tour, guys shine and siller bricht, derk hedges, giants causey stands likewise bedicht. Rings for fingers and lugs, and pins for ties, or your ain designs, qua your heart's desires.
I lived in England for years and years, but I'd also lived in America and Australia and Malaysia. But we had our daughter out there, and being in an apartment on your own with no family around was quite difficult. So I needed a wee bit of a release to, just to get me out of the apartment and away from babysitting. So I started a little jewellery course out in Penang, and it was literally just learning how to twist wire, how to, set pearls and things like that. But when we initially came back with our daughter to show her to the family, we sort of happened upon Holywood and thought that's a nice wee town. And then set about looking for like a nice place to live, somewhere with a view, somewhere close to the sea, nice views of the mountains, something inspirational really. And we came upon this house and just thought that's for us. We can make that into something. So I set about then going to Belfast Metropolitan College here and learning the techniques of how to carve jewellery in wax and then how to cast it to a solid piece of silver. And from then we started making the cranes in Belfast Titanic and Scrabo Tower, for example. Places that actually meant something to someone, where they were proposed to, where they got married. And then I would take those gifts over to Malaysia when I went over there to give to my expat friends. And I've just really enjoyed making little things, from there on in.
Set off on a glistening journey through the craft of a jeweller, was workshop bides along the banks of Belfast Loch in the bonny town of Holywood.
So I'm basically going to heat this up and it'll start to do this lovely liquidation kind of process. And it starts to look like the earth rotating. So for all the kids that are out there who think science and all is pointless, it really isn't when you do this job. There's things like chemistry and physics and everything that I never really did at school, but now I kind of wish I had. But I never knew I was going to be a goldsmith, so it'll hiss, putting it into some water to cool it down, and that's it there. Now you can see how dark that is, but that's a fire stain that's in there. So as a jeweller, we need to get that out because nobody wants to buy a bit of silver that looks black. So we put it into a process here called pickling. So it's an acid, which we mix with water, and we heat that up. And that'll take all the burn stain off it rather than us sit with sandpaper for ages and ages. And then eventually we'll roll it through the rolling mill to make a piece of sheet. So that's what we'll do next. My inspiration basically comes from architecture, bridges, or the landscape. And the waves down at Crawfordsburn, when I go down there, even though I've travelled the world and I've been all over the world, I don't think I've ever heard the sound that comes from the Crawfordsburn waves, and I love going down there and just sitting and listening to them. But a couple of weeks ago, went up for a flight in a light aircraft to go and video north down, all the way from here down to the Mournes, so I could get the rolling hills and the drumlins, and so that's what would really inspire me, would be just the whole natural formation of the land. I just love it. So that's my plan, is to try and encourage people to come and see what we have. Your ears okay?
All good.
Right. I've got a kind of a shape now that I can show you going through this thing. So this rolling mill has made a goldsmith's life a lot easier now. Years ago, they would have simply hammered it and hammered it. So now we can make ours all lovely and nice lines and nice shapes, starting to form it into a nice shape of a metal. So we've started going down the route of computer-aided design, and Steve is learning on a jewellery making programme. So whilst we can do the traditional hammering techniques and the old-fashioned ways of making jewellery, we can now go down the route of something really detailed, really sharp, and it just looks really fantastic. But there's no way you could make it by hand to look so good. And I'm glad my husband's more technical than me, because computer-aided design is not something I can get my head around. So I'll stay with traditional, he can do modern, and then we'll be hunky-dory. It's so malleable that I could bend it with my fingers, but you can see that actually it's quite nice that it's hammering around the mandrel and shaping quite nicely. The cutting's normally fine, right, and the shaping and everything's fine, but there are days when you go in to do a wee bit of soldering where you just know you're talking to a piece of an inanimate object, a piece of silver, going, come on then, come on, and it just won't go. So there are days where you have to go, right, not today, and walk away and think, I'll come back to that tomorrow. And I actually quite like that, because I think that's just the way life is. You go with it, some days it works, some days it doesn't. Don't get stressed, just walk away and come back. And that's quite nice. It's like a recentering, or I'll just go and stand in the back garden in my bare feet some days and do all those sorts of things, because I love reconnecting with nature again, you know, and getting myself recharged back from the ground. So it's quite nice. So we're putting our texture in, make sure both sides are the same. And then that's your wee ring ready to rock and roll. So we'll put that into our little tumbler, and then we'll be all set, ready to go. So you can see that wee texture is quite nice. I actually think the whole ethos of having a wee piece of home when you're away is really, really important. Like I'd remember years ago when I was a child, going up the Scrabo Tower, for example, and just running around and even climbing up to it and everything. Just the whole tactility of the rocks and the wind bushes, and like when you are sort of forming a new piece, all those wee things that would kind of come back to you. So just having customers around the world is lovely. And if I can link in a wee bit more with some more Ulster Scots, that would be wonderful, you know. So hopefully that'll be another thing we'll work on for the future. So even the cranes, for example, when I first started doing those, because I lived overseas for so long, flying in and seeing the cranes as I came in was always my, I'm home, you know. And I kind of almost want, I'm going to get emotional now. I am, this is terrible. Stop. No, so I am thinking of all those wee things. Just is lovely for me, it just takes me right back. So yeah. God, that's bizarre. It's amazing what's inside you. Give me a hard question.